1, 2, 3, 4.
One, two, one, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. You are listening to Online Time Fame. Now, check this out. The title of this show is Charleston White Insight. Rap music is simp culture. Yes, today's rap music, for over a decade, rap has been a simp medium. It's about simping. If you look at like most of the rappers, they got, they have a simp mindset because of what rap came from. That's why it's always good to study history. When you look at history, there's accountability in history. But once people got a lot of cash, and this is society in general, once cash blew up to the point where a lot of dudes got paper, they never got raised correctly. They never got guided in the right direction because once they had more cash than everybody else, they thought they didn't have to listen to nobody no more. So they started making up their own rules. Let me give you one straight rule. This is an old rule. When you went into earrings, earring usage was designated based upon being a certain lifestyle. For example, if I'm correct, the left ear was a heterosexual and a right earring was a homosexual. Now that was for decades. That's why, because before LGBT lifestyles were accepted in the way they were amongst most people, and this is another lame mark move. A lot of marks say, I ain't got no problem with it. When that's just them trying to stay politically correct, because there's definitely a problem with certain things. But these individuals, once they get into mainstream culture, they can't say it's a problem because they will be shut out. So that's a high power coward is what they call them. See, they want to participate, but they don't want to represent. So, as we said, the left ear was heterosexual, the right ear was homosexual. And this is for decades. This is as far back as anybody can remember. But as we came forward on certain sides of gang life had an influence, because gang life, one side over here is this gang, and where the hat turned over this side was another gang. So the gang started to destroy that culture, but it also gave gang members a way to be on that side, have they changed the hierarchy of how to change the protocol of how the earring was supposed to go, and some of them was even down low. So even though they got they left side on the earring, they say, oh no, this is because of the set, but they was really saying something else amongst themselves. So that's another part of it, because what prison may bring is people who voluntarily like a certain lifestyle and blame it on being incarcerated. But on another scale, like you said, break it down like this. All of a sudden, dudes start getting paper. They was a little weird. They start putting earrings in both earlobes. Now, where ain't that feminine? Straight feminine, but they played it like it was cool. Nah, man, that's LGBT, bruh. That's not straight. That's not straight. So the two earrings came in. They stopped differentiating between that rule because people stopped listening. Dudes started getting money. Oh yeah, I know that's how it was, and they wasn't listening. And anybody would go as a child rises up, as youth develop into their own. That's how rock and roll came to be, where the children didn't listen to the music of the parents. So, Charleston White broke that down a lot of times. So, that's why I say one thing when we say Charleston White and they say, man, you all on his. Charleston White is the algorithm right now. The algorithm has gone from a lot of people. It's going from Howard Stern, if you're talking about radio, traditional radio. There's been a lot of people throughout the decades that were the number one figure in the medium of broadcasting. If you're talking about broadcasting from this level, that's why we say online time fame, because it's the online level now. It's the digital platform mediums instead of traditional radio. It changed. You had a lot of figures who they were the number one radio station individual. So right now, if you're talking about the most merit, the most notoriety in broadcasting on a digital level, is Charleston White. It's Charleston White, and not only because of that, not because he's the new hot individual, because of the intelligence that's behind it. It's just like if you go back and you watch 30 for 30 ESPN and you go back and look the documentaries, you see Magic Johnson. And if you know anything about balling, Magic Johnson changed ball because he made it cool to pass. Because everybody know if you in the street and you in the neighborhood and you at the playground, everybody wants to take whatever they saw when people play basketball. They want to imitate their favorite scorer. Whoever's scoring, that's who everybody wanted to be. So you play ball with some dudes, all they doing is shooting all the shots. If you watch Asians play basketball, you watch Filipinos, you watch other Asians like themselves, and Chinese and Japanese, they play ball different. They circle the ball to all sides of people. Everybody touches the ball, and then whoever has the open shot, they shoot. If you go to a college campus and watch all the different nationalities play ball, they play different. We come to the playground, we watching these brothers think they LeBron, they think they Kobe, and they don't know the concept of how the game works. They are selfish when it comes to passing the ball and moving it around. And that's the same way the streets operated. When certain dudes got money, when they got a certain amount of stature, you couldn't tell them the rules of the game no more. Hey, homeboy, that you having your earring on that right side is homosexual. Left side, heterosexual. That was a rule. They crushed that rule. So as that rule was crushed, other rules got decimated. When those other rules got destroyed, you started to see the deterioration of the game. And that's why we say rap music is simp culture. And that's Charleston White type insight. We say that because why? Once dudes got cash, they started getting paper. They swore they was the man. You couldn't tell them nothing. Even if someone rises economically, they always would look back to the elder, not the OG, not the one who was a mark, not the lame, not the sucker, not the conniver, not the schemer, but the live dude. See, that's the thing. The live dude was never met by most of these people. They never met a live dude in their life. Yeah, the dude got paper. The dude sound live to you because you don't know that much. So he seemed live. He looked live. But compared to like high-level players, he wasn't one. He might have been amongst, even if a dude got paper. He was still country. You a country bumping with paper. You ain't a fly, elevated, real boss player. They not that. They never were. And they never met one, or they wouldn't perpetrate being one. And they knew that those who saw them would confuse them with one. That's how the game went, but nobody knew. So if you take a succession of the game, take a succession, take levels of the game. We ain't going to go deep because it ain't really supposed to be put out like that. But just on the basic scale that everyone can hear. One of the lowest scale individuals in street life is a purse snatcher. You can't go no lower than someone who snatches a purse. You know, a woman assaulter, AKA known for other words that we won't say. Child exploiters. These are some of the lowest scale people in the criminal world, in the streets. Other questionable level people would be robbers, people who rob, people who like to fight and bully, and people who are so-called stick-up men. And this is the difference. When you talk about a robber, who you robbing? When you listen to why rap music is simp culture, most dudes who rapping about robbing somebody, they rhyming about robbing somebody that look just like them. They robbing the community. They robbing some so-called black folk. So they losing, but they are promoted in society because that's self-destruction and that's detrimental, genocidal behavior. See, they're marks. If you want to say it in plain terms of the street, lames, marks, dummies. That's what they are. They rob and victimize the weak. Top gangsters don't victimize the weak. These dudes ain't top gangsters. Go watch your documentaries. Go far back. See what those dudes were doing and see what these dudes who call themselves gangsters did. Compare it. We ain't gonna explain it. Maybe it's saying too much when you see it, but when it's on a documentary, it was explained. So we may come with it any kind of way, like a podcast, broadcast. Podcast is audio, gets its name from when the iPod came out in was it 2001 around there? That's when the Apple iPod was invented. And part of that's the reason why they called the broadcast on digital platforms the podcast. They called the broadcast the podcast for that reason. So the point is, we get into the independent medium and you listening to people talking in these harsh times we live in today, with all what's going on around the world, dudes jumping online talking about something very superficial and basic. No information you could use to make your life better. That's the difference. That's why we ain't got to clean this up, because those that know, and most don't know. So that's why you have an Edgar Allan Poe. You got a great writer who just died in the street with nothing in New York City. Hundreds of years, 100 years after he passes, he's one of the standards for literature. See, that's the difference. With these other cats, they getting money quick for a minute. We know who they was. They not going to last. Don't nobody be talking about these dudes 50 years later. But nobody pays homage, especially to literature. That's why you listen to the podcast. The top podcast in the game, it's a number of them, but the one we know is probably Joe Rogan. It's probably the number one podcaster that we know. There's others. There's Rising Up and there's others that's there. But one who can just converse on a number of topics. When it's urban, it got to be some street stuff, some weird stuff, incriminating themselves, people talking too much. But just general topics of intelligence, that would be Joe Rogan. When it comes to hip hop, it would definitely be Joe Budden. And it's Joe Budden because he rhymed before. He had a rhyme deal. He rhymed independently and did wells there too. Did mixtapes too. So he was early when he did his podcast, and he, built himself into a lucrative company. He ain't the podcaster, just him, but it's a company name. And he did well on many platforms because he can go and say something harsh if he has to. But see, the difference with most people, that's why I say rap music is simp culture, because they'll do something unintelligent. See, but it's simp culture because the dudes don't got no self-control. Any broad can put a baby on these dudes in the inner city, and everybody just accepts the 80% single child so-called birth rate, because brothers is loose with their projections of focus when it comes to their ejaculation inside these women, inseminating them. See, no curse words. Get a vocabulary where you don't got to curse. That's why a lot of these dudes can't go downtown. They can't talk to nobody. The only time they go downtown anyway is when they go into court. They ain't never went downtown to sign up for something or do something where they was applying to go to school or something where you had to be able to articulate. See, they talk a lot of reckless stuff in the street to us. Dudes talk crazy to us, and this is a sad thing. Because when they don't talk to you like this. Brothers talk real reckless to you. But as soon as they get in the Caucasian's presence, they stutter. Because they don't even have a vocabulary to say, how are you, sir? Good morning. What are we doing today? They don't have the articulation. They freeze up and get nervous because every time they get confronted in front of a Caucasian, it's probably getting in trouble. From when they was in elementary school, going to the principal's office and being reprimanded. That was their whole experience, sadly, unfortunately. I'm not even laughing at them for that. So as they grew up, they was ignorant. So if they used the language we used and put it together right, they learned how to write rhymes in the boys' home when they were some type of juvenile detention facility, that's a come up. That's why we was always happy when rappers rose above their situation and they found a way to get wealthy and be successful. That was always a celebration, the beginnings of hip hop. Dudes who would have never really got nowhere in life necessarily to the level they got. Now, the other way dudes getting paper and they thought they made economics was probably through doing something negative. But as we said, when you're talking about the hierarchy of the streets, they bullies. Always dudes talking about beating somebody up. Always when you hear a dude talking about putting their hands on somebody, it's always negative. That only leads to negativity because a dude can be a bully, and then if you do something to the bully or you do something to someone who's supposed to be tough, now you in jeopardy of your freedom and you're going to get in trouble. So it's all a losing proposition. It ain't going to win. Somebody can say, I'll beat you up, or if I see you and you talking like that. Now, if something happens to them, you don't get, this ain't the Wild Wild West where you just get to say, well, he stepped forward and I took care of it. That's not acceptable. They have rules, and them rules are slanted toward putting so-called black people in jail. Remember they had the individuals that were online? There were some people online going back and forth, and when the individuals saw each other, one individual pulled out a weapon and he deleted the male and his wife because they're going back and forth. So that back and forth is negative. It's totally unnecessary and leads to nothing. So, so when you want to elevate and prove your merit, prove your intelligence and apply that knowledge, because like we say here, there's 3 levels of conversation. Small minds talk about people. Average minds talk about events, and great minds talk ideas, right? That's the way they say. Now, that's an old saying. It ain't new. But the point is, as it goes today, gossip, news about individual personalities or so-called celebrities, that's a very lucrative subject matter in so-called podcasting, that talking about people. But see, sometimes because of the celebrity, they don't like that they've given up their privacy and they've become a public figure. They don't like when they're associating their character with who they are as an individual. And that's the genius of Charleston White, when he said, nah, this is my character, and I use a lot of different literary styles in how I communicate. I can be sarcastic. See, that's when they lose our people, the so-called American descendant of slavery. Once they got to the point where parents working hard, second grade, parents is working, tired, and they not sitting down and reading and making sure the child can eventually read on their own so they can get a vocabulary. Because if school is responsible for teaching someone everything they supposed to know, they may not know that. The crowded school, you got disruptive children, and you talking public school. It's not what it used to be. There was a time when a public school teacher was the epitome of education, and it changed because teachers aren't appreciated the way they should be. Teachers ain't appreciated. That's why dudes can rhyme all they want. A lot of dudes who rhyme were good at reading and writing. Obviously, they can write their rhymes, and they are articulate, and they are smart. That's why it's always the language against Tupac, trying to discredit Tupac and say, well, he took ballet class. But he was also educated at home and read books about a varied subject matter. And it's a dude, it's a group called Bruce Hornsby and The Range. And I can't remember the name of the song. I think the song was called "That's the Way It Is," and Tupac made the song over again. This was after Tupac had passed, and the song was called "Change" or something like that. If I'm, so yeah, "The Way It Is." That was Bruce Hornsby in The Range. That was his group. And the Tupac Amaru Shakur estate contacted Bruce Hornsby. I read an article about it, and they said, "Hey, we're gonna use your song for a Tupac record." And Tupac and them remade it, but that was a deep song even from Bruce Hornsby. But he said, even him, this is a Caucasian, he's a rock and roll dude, soft rock, as I guess they would call it for genre and category. He said, yeah, Tupac was very, like deep, different. You can see he read books. A lot of MCs talk about it. So we ain't saying nothing negative. We don't mean it in a negative way when we mention MCs or different artists, but it's just that what hip hop became when the economics grew, people got outside themselves and they forgot what the mission was. And the mission couldn't be community development no more. It became materialism. Ignorant materialism, it's called. And it became wild, and it became just simping, throwing like wads of cash to females, not building businesses, not building community centers. Dudes say, well, I built stores too. But you threw 5 buildings away in the strip club. You threw 5 buildings worth of cash at these women for years. And when the money slowed down, you didn't have it like that. So that was a trick move. What you mean it ain't tricking it when you got it? It's always tricking, it's tricking. Even, you can still, we're not saying don't give nobody no cash. Yeah, take care of that sister. Take care of that shorty. Make it where she all right. But maybe you showed her a way to get out the strip club. There's an MC, a female, and there's some rappers had one time told her you should do something better with your life. She became a rapper. Very famous. I ain't going to say who it is, and we ain't saying it, not saying it, because as we said, small minds talk about, we would just say small ideas. Talk about, people. I won't even just say small minds, but we could say small ideas. Small ideas focus on events, and great ideas focus on not just ideas. Great minds talk about ideas, but solutions. That's why I say a lot of these leaders, they got their PhDs and a lot of credits, but all right, how do we get out of trouble? How do we make something happen out of nothing? So that's what Pac was talking about on, got to make a dollar out of 15 cents, still pay your rent. So that's what Tupac gave. Tupac gave our people their whole idea. for an organization for inner city people called Empowerment for the People. Teach them how to start a business with a small amount that's theirs, their idea. They don't got to talk to nobody. They just got to learn how to read, educate themselves, and say, all right, now I got this business. Let me develop myself. Let me develop my product that I can afford, and now I can start at least looking in the direction of having two incomes, a multi-income household. I got my job, but let me also do this on the side and learn about this. That's what you never saw rap do. Because after a certain point of time, rap wasn't allowed to say nothing. A lot of executives tell a rapper, oh, no, don't put that on the record because you're being distributed on a major level. Now we want you to focus, and we've heard Too Short. I will say Too Short. Everybody thinking Too Short was negative. Too Short has mentioned in interviews how he was told, nah, stick to that negative stuff. Don't put a lot of positive records on there. So, that's not to blame the record label, because bad stuff sells. And so that's what they was doing. But when you're talking about really being high level in the game, dudes heard about the game. They get to meet some of anyone in entertainment. So they came, and brushed and came around somebody, or, they met somebody. But when you look at it, if you take away rap, who were these people? Now, before we get to that, when you really talk about what does the USA represent, the Southern MC and his family who came from the game, you can see the difference in their lyrics. See, a lot of dudes, the way they came up in the game, before they came up in the game, what were they doing? That's the same statement. But then go here. This is the main part. Go to the origins and the foundation and the founding principles of how does the USA operate? What is the objective? What is the aim? What is the goal? What is the big picture of how we supposed to see life? The U.S. credits itself, the USA, it credits itself with being a nation that functions based upon merit. Merit is not like socialism where everyone's supposed to get something for no reason. Communal in nature, communism, socialism. This isn't that. This is capitalistic pursuit of economics based on a merit system, meaning merit defined as the quality of being good and deserving praise. So not just praise in words, but in deeds and actions, opportunities. If you worked for something, you get something. That's merit based on your own quality of being adequate. The U.S. is referred to as a meritocracy, meaning it's based upon your hard work gets you in an advanced position. That's why people come from all over the world to the U.S., because in some countries you work hard, you pretty much get the same everybody else gets. In some, but if you're in the U.S., the theory is you could become a business individual. Your own hard work can bring you up. Now, that's not completely accurate, because some people get more favor than others based upon their race. And that's documented. The book is called The Color of Money. And it talks about how all of the different governmental actions, legislation, rules that were for specifically for Caucasians. When you talk about the trades, so-called black folk in the 1920s, 30s, they couldn't be in certain unions, trade unions. Only Caucasians could be in those. So that wasn't meritocracy. That was what put Caucasians ahead at the working class level. But not to get into that. But the point is, with hip hop, meritocracy was existing, and we thought it would exist, meaning we thought everybody would get theirs and help others. Then we saw like almost 50 years later, most of these dudes are selfish. They never put nobody on, and some of them was too ignorant and wouldn't know how to put nobody on. Like, they great at rapping, but as soon as they move from rapping, they ain't good no more. They ain't efficient. They can't build. They can't make other people get money. Now, they can dump a bunch of cash in some female's bank account and buy her a bunch of stuff and have a bunch of babies by her where she can cash out at and go to the child support court and rob them, be all up in these dudes, executives and these artists and producers' pockets. See, after she turned on them, because they didn't understand what the program was. The program is your mark. and she gonna play you like a mark. And women been playing these dudes like marks, unfortunately, for 40 years. 40 years of mark playing. These dudes been playing a sucker role. You look at the dude, he should have known I'm funny looking, my game is weak, but I done came up on some paper, I better be careful. Nah, he ain't listening to nobody telling him that, because his mind was gone. He strayed away from the streets and from the game. And when we say streets, it could have been an uncle at his house. Could have been a cousin. Couldn't take constructive criticism like, hey man, don't think that she really like you. What you mean? Well, she don't like you, bro. She out not a gold digger. She just ain't checking for you. You ain't got the type of game where you would know if she was checking for you or not. You don't have evaluative, I think I would say it like that. Evaluative game. You ain't got it. Your level of being able to evaluate someone's character is very basic. Like, you came up, you got paper, so rappers started associating their economics with their intelligence. We don't say names, but we will say there are some MCs that are highly intelligent. Do they still make some bad decisions when it came to women? Of course. That's life. No one's perfect. None of us are. But as we're saying, on a higher scale of ideas, as we want to exchange, they never gave nothing. The rappers, they was in their own bubble at a certain point where it was just go for self and get mine. And they wasn't doing no development. So that's why I say when Tupac came with the Keep Your Head Up song and he was like, well, the real man get up. Our people said, hey man, what do you mean by that? So I got to do something to help this so-called black woman. Yeah, do something. It can help somebody else if you want to. So that's when they came with it. Oh, I got 3 ways they can get paid. They put out a book on it. See, unlock the physical fitness expert within you. They came with that. Boom. Explain it further. And it still go on because the game don't stop. But as we say, these dudes, they rapping, they telling old stories from 30 years ago if they rap 30 years ago. But as far as some current high level stuff, according to how the world is working now, they don't got that. They ain't got no they talking news. News is a surefire way to not really get in trouble on the podcast level. Because you're just like anybody else. If a big story comes out, some monumental event happens, Mount Everest crumbled and snow fell and buried 3 houses. That might be a big story, an earthquake or something, some natural disaster. They talk about whatever happens. So you get a continuous check. You're not a threat, and you're a systematic journalist. But it's different levels of journalism as well. It's levels to it. As ain't that how they say it? It's levels to the game. So a lot of these dudes, they popping up because they can sit at home. Their wife don't want them going too far. Oh yeah, you can sit in there and do some podcasting. So she the one macking the household. She macking. She got her husband in there talking. He doing his thing, and she can check his money, and he ain't moving around. He ain't long range with the game. He limited. The women didn't flip the game, and the females be running these dudes now. So any dude who know how to be moving around, they don't like him in this U.S. society. 5 rappers in each state had been given the power, whether they was executives or artists with executive power. They select marks just like them. You ain't gonna see them say, well, I'm gonna work with this live dude, because they don't even know what a live dude look like. It's so many marks that be in a circle. They all think they relatively smart, but they are relatively marks. No, nothing personal. Bring it to the street in the club. Not because you buying all the champagne. Yeah, all the girls is over there. And that's good, but they just using you because you a free source of beverages. That's what they for. You a mark to them. But when people hear someone say you a mark, your game is lame, you a trick, they think someone's being detrimental and talking down. Instead of, it's a fact. It's a word called trick. It's one who entertains and purchases favors from women. That's what you doing. You purchasing favors. You paying her, you buying drinks, and then you got her number, and you gonna take her out to dinner, and you hoping you get to have interaction with her on a sensual level. So that's what you do. So what? But the point is, it is what it is. You doing what you doing. And most dudes do that. It's an implied tricking. because they know you got the bread. They're going to see something from it. It may even be something physical. They might be feeling you. But if on the scale of game, these dudes ain't live. If it wasn't rapping, dude would be a bookkeeper. He would be a business owner, a truck driver. Ain't nothing wrong with none of this. But don't think because of the income level they got as an entertainer and now they got millions, that don't make you $1 million dude. It just make you a dude with $1 million. But they've conflated that to mean I'm live and I'm real. Nah, you a mark from back in the park. You a mark. You're not no real live one, so it's just what it is. It's not a hateful thing. We glad you got paper, but what you've done in your own ego, you've crippled the community. You haven't done anything that make a difference. Like when you look at so-called black businesses, dudes who was getting money, you would see them have 20 buildings and 20 stores, and their name would be buzzing because everybody was eating. The closest it came to feeding people like what community development was before the segregation, meaning integration, meaning when everybody was able to shop everywhere. You had icons of neighborhoods and communities, business leaders. These was the leaders of the street. Street dudes ain't the street dudes of today that come from rap. They not leaders of the neighborhood like that because they was a nobody before they got on. Meaning you know, you might have been big, you might have been able to punch somebody, but the intellectual capacity to communicate on all scales wasn't there. You couldn't talk to the dude laying on the street corner on the curb who might have had some hard problems and then be talking to the mayor, a real mayor, not a mayor who got elected who don't know that much and he's a figurehead. You couldn't go higher up the scale of communication just as a regular individual. Not because of who they were, but because you had common sense, logic, and the ability to communicate. These is the dudes that the dudes in positions that we see today don't like. This is why ain't no cash being made, but a lot of dudes got a few dollars. They don't want to see it go higher. They don't want to have 20 dudes around them and they all balling, because then they would look like the regular dude they really are. They like to seem like they one of the few. But what I'm saying is they crippled the USA in the process, because the USA had you. They say, you got this, John? Yeah, boss. I'm taking care of it, boss. He answering to the major company. Or every time he get a deal, they cutting him on it. But there was a time when the major company was looking at the talent. They was looking at those who had the vision, saying, yeah, we could work with you because they had the vehicle and we had the talent. That's how it was when they signed someone like Richard Pryor. They knew Richard Pryor in the entertainment world, in the film world. They knew he liked to get high. But they said, but his level of comedy and how he saturated the streets with his comic albums, just like Dolomite, everybody wanted to hear, well, what is Richard Pryor going to do and how is he going to deliver? They knew he was a serious drug user. But the talent unfolded when they chopped it up. He was difficult sometimes, but when he chopped it up and put it together, it was comedic brilliance. And they knew that. So they looked past, all right, well, we got to deal with them. These dudes don't like to deal with nobody who may have issues of being smarter than them, being taller than them, being more handsome than them. Now, what dude is even paying attention to all of that anyway? They just don't like you. So they made a bubble of a mark wall, a wall of marks that's all together. They all suckers. There's some that's smart, but most are lame and not exceptional. That's why we don't have exceptional executives, and we're not hearing executive level music. I mean, high level, masterful. That's the better way to put it. Not executive level, excuse me, because executive is just an administrator. That don't mean they're high powered. Now, if you get an artist, like even when you go down to Atlanta, you got artists that started monumental record labels. They used to be artists. They knew music. They wrote hits. They performed. You had top executives. They used to be top engineers. They knew sound. A lot of dudes now, they just worked for a dude who was a dude, and now they the dude. That's why the music has dropped. They doing a lot of talking because they might have made some paper, but they can't step in no studio and make no top level record. That's the difference. But anyway, when you're talking about the rap, music is simp culture insight. That came from Charleston White. Because of what he might have said in a fraction of a conversation. These dudes trying to argue with Charleston White on the internet. And he's telling them, it ain't about the internet. I've moved on. I'm in the comedy clubs. I'm doing appearances and making economics there. And they still trying to argue about what's going on the internet, because the more they make through conflict, Conflict sells. See, development, building, and elevation doesn't sell the way negativity, because so many people are in a negative state of mind from their environment and their circumstances. As they say, misery loves company. These dudes is miserable, so they pull themselves to where other people are down in the ground at. They pull themselves down and stay there. They ain't elevating with solutions, but they talking to you every day. And they not saying, this is how you make this move. This is how you sign up for community college. This is how you get this grant. You ain't going to hear none of that. And then don't just tell me to go to school. What's the larger picture? Because as a public figure, as you having a profile, where are you going to lead and open a door where we can come to? Because we have talent and the ability to make economics for the nation. As a general, we could take care of ourselves and take care of our community and take care of the whole nation. They ain't got that. They don't have them level dudes no more. The dope dudes were feared and sometimes eliminated, because they, may have had they had an idealistic view of saving the world and all of that stuff, and my whole people. Some of our people ain't about nothing. Some of our people are traitors. Some of our people are self-haters. Some of our people are damaged, and they can't go to the top. They may never reform themselves. You can't help everybody. But what we saw in this era of rap music, simp culture, dudes didn't want to help nobody. Everybody around them is a mark. That's how you know a mark. Everybody around them ain't live. Just look at the dudes who be around them, listen to them talking. They say the N-word every 3 seconds. See, that's a violation online, because you don't know who's listening, and you ain't supposed to talk like that in front of everybody. See, there was a time you didn't say everything in front of everybody. Everybody didn't hear my most in-depth, intimate conversation, so you don't hear me even curse. This is general. This is like being on television. You don't curse on NBC, ABC, CBS. You don't curse there. You talk with standard English. That's the difference. See, dudes don't know standard English. Moms were struggling, dysfunctional household, dysfunctional community. They didn't have the leadership and the direction. They had a fragmented family, and they didn't have someone who pulled back and taught them. They didn't have the moral standard. After the 60s, the moral standards were gone. Grandmothers started to pass away, and people started to become more relaxed in how they taught. Charleston White broke that down. So we ain't going to just clown on people and say it. But if you don't do the clowning part, you ain't going to get the people. You got to throw some ignorance in there for inner city people for them to like it. Because, even if you dropping some jewels, see, there's that long range game. They don't know what that is. And we ain't going to go too far because they ain't paying. They ain't paying, so I ain't saying. But what I'm saying is the rise of the player hater was the next level of societal destruction. Let's put it like that. You see how we said that? The rise of the player hater. Because now we just, in general, a general use is how they say he's a player hater. See, that's what it was when it was the Bay Area used to say that. The West Coast. Man, you over here player hate, man. That's them southern dudes, and that's the west side. And they had it. It was everywhere. If you was around a player, they used the word player hater. So when people say they invented it, dudes who was cross country might have drove somewhere and said something and drove away, and the dude who heard them said it, and now they arguing over who made up the word. So that's a funny thing too. Y'all invented that word, but what did you do with it to improve the whole community? You just banked off it and got paid. We happy for you. But, did you put out a book on it before anybody could have thought about it? No, because that's literacy again. You ain't did no work. No matter what people say, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson puts out books. He don't put the book out necessarily to make economics, but he has books for a certain amount of years that can chronicle his progress in the entertainment industry. So even though he's a master troll and he know how to say something just joking around and a lot of things about him, but as far as entertainment wise, he knew how to publish books. Like, I don't even remember this book. I was in a bookstore, and I'm looking through this 50 Cent book that had just dropped, and I'm paging through it. And he had a line in the book where he talked about the only way one is going to get ahead is by working hard. Now, right there, people ain't going to want to hear that. Most people who read a book, they want to hear something like, oh, it's easy to get on in 30 days. You could be making this much this quick. That's what people go for. But to tell the truth and say the way you're going to get on is to work hard and accomplish and achieve and self-improve, that ain't going to be popular. He said that in the book. It wasn't going to. He might have said that ain't going to be popular for me to say that. But if you really want to know, you got to work hard and really focus and dedicate yourself to an objective in order to achieve it, and then you'll benefit from that accomplishment. So that ain't what nobody want to hear. But when we go back to the player hater, it became hater. It's common to call someone a hater, but the origination point of the word hater comes from player hater. So in the streets, they were saying that he's a player hater. That's how they were saying it. But what it became was hater, and it became a term used by all people from all walks of life. Hey, this guy's a hater. Now that's, presidents of countries have said hater, but it comes from the street level of a player hater. So that was like a trick, a mark, some low level thief, somebody like that who don't like the female and he doing something crazy, to her. He's a player hater. He's mad because you checking game, So this is what this evolved into the general environment of most so-called black people, especially those that started getting cash amongst the inner city people. There'd be a player hater because this is what happened. This is how the player hater rose to power. Player haters rose to power through literacy. If you listen to a lot of dudes, you know where they got their game from? A book. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning from a book, but a lot of these dudes learn the game from reading Iceberg Slim, Robert Iceberg Slim Beck. That was the writer known as Iceberg Slim. They read his book, The Autobiography of His Life. They read that, The Autobiography of My Life. And then they read Donald Goines out of Detroit, Michigan. So that, Donald Goines might have had 15, 20 books, like paperback, what they call Pulp Fiction books back then, urban grit novels, and this was from the 60s. That started like around, now other authors before that was a famous author named Chester Himes. Chester Himes wrote the book that they made a couple movies in like 1970. One movie was called Cotton Comes to Harlem. That was based on the Chester Himes book, those characters. And then he also had the movie called Come Back Charleston Blue. That was the Harlem backdrop of the book, and that came from Chester Himes. He and some characters that he wrote in his book. So they based it on that. So the point is, street literature, street books, and that wasn't nothing new. It always went down. But when these dudes started reading Iceberg Slim, they done caught a case, they in jail, and everybody passing that Iceberg Slim book around, and they reading that. And they reading these, and there's other stories of street literature. Like if you know street literature, you'd hear these dudes saying lyrics in their song, and you hear them saying stuff. And if you know where they got that lyric from. Oh, that came from that book. He bit that from here. And you would know. So you already knew these were characters. These wasn't no real live players, because any real live player is going to see, when you say, hey, you read this book right here, he's going to look at you crazy. Like, man, that's a lame. You got your game from Iceberg Slim. I'm in this for real. So most dudes, they are a combination of what they heard, what they saw, and what they thought the game was. That's why they are automatic player haters, because they don't even like players. They just envy and want to be in a position. So we became a people who saw something and tried to become it and stop anyone real from being it. That's why the inner city, the so-called black community, is trash. It's nothing, because the real dudes don't even get to participate, because the Caucasians that control inner cities, which they do, the economy overall, unless it's something very street level, and they indirectly control that too. The people that's in control, they don't want to talk to no real dude, because the real dude ain't going to be bootlicking like that house Negro that they like to talk to. So that's how they took the nation down. The U.S. fell off when Charleston White said, white people, I ain't your problem. He pointed out to their mistake and flaw that they made, where they ruined the USA, when they developed all the goods and services in the manufacturing that is supplied by China. They shouldn't have never gave that up, just because they could make temporary profits. And then they gave the economic power to China. Why would you create another enemy that you don't want to deal with militaristically. They're not where the U.S. is militaristically yet. But, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. So the point is, the player hater became a culture. Anything that was live, they became a character and acted live. They imitated live. They read the Iceberg Slim. They read the Donald Goines book. They watched the movies. They went and got Superfly. They went and saw the Mac. They went and downloaded it, or they watched and went and rented The Godfather. Anybody you see who constantly is focused on Scarface, they learn from characters. They never knew a Scarface in real life. They never knew a real macaroni or a player. They never knew one. And then they'll say, well, my cousin was a Mac and a player. And then you got to talk about categories. And you got to talk about levels of qualification. See, take this example. Let's talk about when you compare boxing. I read this article recently about, by the way, this is the Online Time Fame podcast. I'm your host, JD. Now, more importantly, I was reading an article about boxing. I was looking something up. And the writer, I wish I could go back and find it, because I was looking for something else and found this. And the writer was saying, yeah, this is dedicated to the fighters. And boxing recognizes the fighters because everyone in boxing is important. See, there's the journeyman in prize fighting, professional boxing and prize fighting. The journeyman is the individual who probably has a job. He probably works, and then after work he trains. He does that 2 hours a day in the gym or whatever he can fit in addition to his family life and his regular life. And he trains, and sometimes he'll get a call. Hey man, we got a fight for you. We got a new kid coming up. He's 19. We trying to bring him up to pro ranks, and we want to know if you want to, we can give you 2 weeks to get ready. Are you in shape? And most of the time, they'll try to be, well, yeah, you give me 2 more weeks. I think I can be ready. It might be 3 weeks. Now, that's a big time, because a lot of those fights are last minute fights. But you get a good journeyman. He ain't really a high level professional, but he does help that younger fighter learn the ropes and get the experience, more importantly, of fighting on a professional level. And once that journeyman is important, sometimes he'll test him. Like the journeyman ain't where he don't fight full time. He may not be able to for different reasons. He may not have the talent, but he's still a fighter. He still can be dangerous. You never know. He may surprise you. But as I said, if the matchmaking was correct, that journeyman is very important in building a young fighter up, an experienced fighter as he comes up in the professional ranks. Then you have a contender. A contender is a fighter who can contend for a heavyweight title at any given time. He's maybe, let's say, the top 10 fighters. In the ranking system, he's in the top 10. He's in the top 15, ranked in that area. It may be regional. It could be statewide. It could be regional. It could be national. It could be global. He's a contender. This dude, you're gonna get a good fight from him. He's not gonna lay down. He's gonna come to the fight in shape, and he is a professional, but he won't be known to hold a title. He's not necessarily a recognized champion consistently, but he's dangerous, and he may win a title, but he always contends for one more than anything else. And then you have the champion level. You have the elite, the blue chip fighters, the top fighters. You got the multi style fighter who will be from championship to championship at any given time. Even if he loses, he'll fight for championships often, and he's always there. He's probably won a title before, and he is a champion level fighter, depending on the circumstances of that fight. And when people just say generally, oh man, that fighter's a bum, the only way they're a bum, because they're all an integral part of fighting, is if they didn't train. If that fighter didn't train, he didn't give his best, he didn't give his all, and he just came to get a paycheck and laid down after 2 punches, even though he's a journeyman and he knew he wasn't going to win and he was afraid to get hit. That's more or less they could attempt to call him that name. But if you're talking about he worked hard, they're all part of the development of boxing. And the streets is the same way. You got people who are journeymen in the streets. They're low level, they try hard, but they're not no superstars of the game. So when people say, yeah, my uncles and all them was players, what level were they? Were they championship level, high scale international, or were they just neighborhood local corner bar, the local tavern? Were they in there trying to make it happen? Are all of the girls they deal with obese, but they consistent with the obese big girls? And they the big girl king. And they balling, riding in the big car with the big girls, and they getting paper on that level. It can be that, but all they girls aren't attractive. All the people they deal with is a mediocre scale. They ain't long range. They can't go to the tops of interaction. But they still in the game in some kind of way. So what level? So when people use a general term, they say, well, my uncle was a player. That don't mean he was a top player. He could just be an entry level player, outside the factory where everybody work at player. But that don't mean he was Las Vegas big balling on the night of the fight level player. The one in the back private room getting it player. That don't mean he was them. And most people never met them. They don't know them. So when they see them, they gravitate. Oh, yeah, what's up? But you ain't on the same level. That's when you can tell they ain't on the same level, because when they meet people that's qualified on the level of those players, or who knew them players or was around that level players, they player hating. They player hating because they don't know what a player look like. Because all of us, everybody ain't claiming street. By circumstance, we may just been around somebody that was in the street. You got a lot of Italians, obviously they not in the mob, but because they are Italian, they may have been in certain circles where they know certain things and they seen things. But you ain't gonna never know what they saw, who they know. And if they identify you to be somebody real, they'll tell you a few things. Oh yeah, such and such and such, because they can see it in you. The way the inner city works, they see it in you and they go against you because they getting subsidized and they're being paid by the European, the Caucasian, the corporation executives who they got you as a houseboy, and this houseboy is the one in the community. He looks big to us, but he really small. He a figurehead. There's a list of companies that we won't list. Every time on the news, they talk about certain entertainment companies amongst so-called black folk, and they say he owns it. As soon as a problem comes up and you see the court documents, you see other people listed as owners. But when they promoting it and selling it, they calling this individual that we know about an owner. And he own a fraction, or he don't even own that company, because they're figureheads. So they ain't players anyway. A player could be a figurehead, but the way these dudes is, they not like, hey man, I'm playing this game. These people using me, but I'm going to look out for you. I'm going to make sure you don't got to go through what I'm going through, or I'm going to give you a play, and then me and you can do something on the side. Nah, they don't do none of that. It's everything we see is haters in today's culture amongst so-called rap. The rap music is not what it was when it elevated and began, because it was internationally sought through word of mouth. It wasn't even known. You just heard about it. Oh yeah, man, they got this record right here. You heard, but it was counterculture. It wasn't accepted. It wasn't mainstream like today. It wasn't no major labels that had rap artists. There was no rap department in these executive companies. It didn't exist in the beginning. Any label that they was on was some little small independent label, and then that independent label may have gotten absorbed, and the distribution was then done through a major label. So hip-hop was on the fringe. It wasn't even part of music in terms of the music industry. Now that it's accepted in the music industry, it's accepted to have a bunch of lames and marks in one circle. Dudes is marks. You can tell by how they get done with the women. Every time a woman's, you got 100 million, 10 million, whatever, and they got a broke chick who got him on child support, and he didn't even see that coming. That's a basic move. So you know they wasn't familiar with being around women, attractive women, the attractive level that they got once they got paper. So you can see they haters, because inside they tricks, they simps, they weak. So they don't even want to see a real one around them. They might think you gonna look at their girl. Ain't nobody looking at no woman. We looking at the paper. We looking at some business. We looking at getting enough to not even be around you like that. But we can do business. No, the player hater was accepted and embraced in U.S. society because he was a user and an exploiter, and he was a leech of his own people. He presents himself as something better, but they was nothing but something less. That's all they became. And that's why it's the rap music simp culture. They became simps. They was lames. They talk a good game. The rhymes sound good. They bouncing on the track. But when you turn off that music and walk back on that sidewalk, you just looking at a mark. A mark that's good with words in many cases, not every case. Everyone has weaknesses, but because someone's a public figure, it amplifies their weaknesses that they was a mark. Just be yourself. Be who you are, and we accept who you are. But when dudes want to put on a persona, a facade, and make it look like they were somebody else, and they blocking, oh, no, don't help him. They making calls telling people don't make no business deals with you. That's what was happening for the past 30 years. Haters. When the haters got in position, the haters was hating. And they made their business to stop others. And now that they being put under pressure, they don't have no allies. That's why when these dudes catch a situation, they don't have nobody stepping up saying, nah, that's my people. Because they was all users of each other, or they was abusing and taking advantage. So nobody speaks for them in a community way like, nah, he's solid. I'm solid, he's solid. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. You ain't gonna have that. It's a bunch of underlings and flunkies under the dudes that seem like they in position. And in the old days, they used to call that Negro rich. He's Negro rich. He ain't really rich. He's Negro rich. Because there's always a follower trying to be what he see. They trying to be what they see others doing. They comparing their success for Caucasian success. These dudes is dropouts. High school dropout, not because their parents couldn't sustain them to go to school. They didn't have the discipline to even finish, and they had everything you need to finish. They had the family support system. Even though they lived in the projects, they could have finished high school. But nah, they went and tried to do something else. They didn't go back and show the discipline to get their diploma. So what we're saying is there's other mechanisms in their behavior to show that they was marks. Not the education part, but they just marks. They not street recognized. You take MC off their name, and they ain't who they want you to believe they are in the street. Not game, not being a gangster or a bully. They just not players. They rhymed about it. As I said, they read some stories, and they saw the movies, and they wrote it up. But all their behavior is counter to what a player is. They player haters, and as I said, they're simps. They're marks, they're lames, and they're tricks. These are known words. It's not like hate speech. These are definitions in the dictionary. These words are all defined. Mark, trick, simp. Simp is a new entry in the dictionary, coming from from a formal usage that is like communal. Now everybody knows about simps. Little grade school kids are like, you're a simp. They know, but that's street stuff. And those were identifiers of people that we see every day. So the dudes, they project themselves as being live, but they not. That's why they don't want nobody live close to them, because then you would be able to see for a fact, oh yeah, he is a mark. He got more money, but he the mark. He ain't the live dude. He's a hater. He ain't the player. He's the hater. It became evident. So that's why when Charleston White hit the scene and he started talking, the jokes keep the jokes going. The jokes is what the internet like. The trolls, the joking, the insults, the back and forth. That's the low scale, but that's the low level that the people like as far as the ignorance in it, which is entertaining. And that's fun sometime too. But as far as the negativity, the trolling, and the stalking and all of that, that's off limits. That's what makes the internet not what it was in the beginning, because it was more of a free form of expression that was harmless, and it was fun. Now people are under pressure. They have to talk reckless. They don't have the talent to just be about business, to say, well, I'm putting out 50 groups. I'm gonna make other people successful. They can go through me. We can do fair business. They ain't doing fair business. They putting bad contracts in front of people because somebody put one in front of them and they said, well, I'd rather do this than go get a regular job or education or a trade or a skill, and they just sold out. So that resentment of them selling out and the money they thought they lost, they took that L. But then they saying, well, you got to help me get back what I lost. That's how the music business works. That's how a lot of companies are. Well, you got to get jerked to learn. I'm not just going to teach you. And some of that can be recognized. But overall, player haters. They ain't no players because they don't even know what it is. We ain't going to tell them what it is because that's what they do. They study and they listen. So they steal all the game, but they don't give nothing back. So everything you see, when you see these dudes on a DVD, that's the mark level dudes. Even though they players, they the ones dumb enough to get on camera and co-sign the streets the way they do. The real dudes is not coming on camera if they balling and they actively getting paper. Why would they come and show the law enforcement what they was doing? That's dumb. They never would do that. So all of them books and all of that, that's a figment of imaginations. There's some reality. Truth is strangely mixed with fiction, of course. But as far as just some high-level, high-powered maxim player, not even. No, not even close. They would never do that. See, so we can put the cosign on that. Ain't no real dude gonna come like that unless he lost his mind. Yeah, he was real until he did that. Until he started coming out saying who was who and what was what, he's in violation. But they paid him to do that. He got a check. And if he didn't get a check and did it, it's even worse. But it's like I said, it's a culture from the Charleston White insight because he talked about it. He's mentioned some things and dropped some stuff about how these rap dudes ain't who you think they are. It's just characterization. Yeah, they might be bullies. The first thing they gonna say is how they can punch you, but you ain't checking your broad in the mental capacity though. Of course, you putting your hands on women because you intellectually inferior. You can't just tell her something and make her sit down or say you right and respect you. No, you gotta be a simp at home, but you a gorilla in the street. When you look at these dudes' interactions with women, it's mark interactions, it's lame interactions, and they did something really stupid because they don't have game. They got bullying ability. They can sell something to somebody and take advantage of someone that mentally, distracted, like a drug addict. They can serve them. But as far as serving the game and those of equal footing, yes, they can take care of someone's, take advantage of someone with a low mental capacity at the time. They serve them and they get their paper and then they celebrating. You're supposed to be sad you got all that street money. Like, man, I took advantage of the community, and there's people will tell you that. I don't feel good about what I did, so I like to do better, and I try to help. And they don't want to talk about what they did all the time in public. So we ain't condemning them in that way, but we just saying what you see in the public is a lot of marks. Them ain't high-level players. They just not. And all they did was try to tell women the ones without the paper ain't the real ones. And that was the player hater in them because you just a mark with money. It's a mark or a lame or a simp with money and a mark or a lame or a simp without. You're the one with. And the women know who you are. And that's why she doing you like you doing. You can see how she moving. Your kids, everybody. The pets in the house, the cat, and the snake. That's in that cage with the reptiles and with the lizard. They all know you a mark. That's all. They don't even have brain capacity, but they know you square. Your whole energy is that. It's not a detriment. It's just who they are by their DNA. It's just who they are by their psychological makeup. Marks. Marks make the world go round too. It ain't like marks ain't part of the earth. They lames and square. It's just that when they try to take on a different position and persona to be somebody else, that's when they ruined the streets because their own selfishness and ego, they compromised the natural order of life. They stopped progress. Oh, I ain't going to let them come up. I'm going to do whatever I can do to not let them get a footing where they can do business. It wasn't fair business. Business ain't fair. But they went above and beyond. Finally, on the example of that, we mentioned the artist Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. So he's prominent throughout the entertainment world. 50 Cent couldn't even get a record deal in New York City because all of the artists was jealous and upset when 50 Cent made the song How to Rob. It was a parody record. He said everybody's name, so that was an original form of trolling. He was playing around, said he would rob them, and that made him really take it seriously. Now, it can be taken seriously that someone makes a song like that, but he was smart enough to know they were going to answer him. That was his theory. He's probably one of the originators of digital trolling and trolling in general. He ain't the only one, but he was powerful as a troll. But it backfires because now it made everybody else think trolling was the way, not intelligence, not being smart, not being innovative, but they just became a hater. But the point is, all the artists didn't want to see him rise above, and they put out the word. A lot of artists and executives, they said, nah, if I was you, I wouldn't sign him. That was after the first record deal he had. They put out the word he was blackballed. So it took Eminem, the Caucasian from Detroit, based out of L.A., working with Dr. Dre from NWA. It took them to say, nah, we gonna put 50 on. They knew who he was. They saw his output on the mixtape circuit. He's putting out mixtapes frequently. They saw him rhyming. They seen him working, and they saw his work ethic. That's all it is. And they said he got talent. But my point is, it was the West Coast who had to sign him because the East Coast had blackballed him. And look how much talent they sacrificed in order to prove a point that they didn't like who he was. They could have talked to him and said, hey, that record, and you was talking about robbing people, and that sends a wrong message. Because not the fact that we crying, we can take care of that and we can make it something it's not supposed to be. We just saw Tupac go through that with Biggie, and you were here talking like that. He did whatever he had to do to get rich, or he said die trying. But that ain't how players move. The player gonna be the player wherever he is, whatever level he's on, however he exists. That's why some of the most decrepit situations you might see some players. Yeah, they down, but that don't mean they out. But who they are is the essence of who they are. And if they real, you respect the real. These other dudes started thinking buying champagne and drinking and having an expensive tab meant they was players. No, you just a big spender. Respect due. You fed everybody, but you still a mark. It's still rap, music, simping. You're a simp in music culture. You're a simp culture individual. It's fine. It's not like someone's putting them down. It's just look at the actions. Nothing has to be said. Sit back, look at the actions and say, yeah, they're simping. Yeah, they're marks. Yeah, the girls see them coming and they know they can get some paper from them without no kind of high-level intelligence. She got more intelligence than he got, but that don't mean she's high-level intellectually or even on a scheme level. She can scheme him because he's dumb. Or he's just, he's not there. So that's what this is. But anyway, this is what this is. This is Online Time Fame. That's the show. It's the Online Time Fame podcast. And this episode was Rap Music is Simp Culture. Charleston White insight. And as I said, he's spoken on this in different ways, not quoting him, but putting it in that context. And he became, as he self-identifies as, the algorithm, and showed everybody this is how you get to it. Take it to another level, to different venues. Don't just stick in one place on the platforms you on. Move on. And that's how the individuals that we see that have been talking in the same place for 5 years, and they may have gotten a check every so often, or however the case, the pay schedule was, they got dependent and complacent. And you can't even get complacent when you know the level and the amount of player haters that exists. And with that, we will say peace.